hears that an army is amassing and assembles the lesser gods to inform them that Tiamat is bringing an army of miracle monsters, so horrifying to look at that just seeing them will cause anyone to collapse in terror and run away. But the gods agree that Ea is responsible for Tiamat's wrath, as he killed her husband Apsu, and surely any woman can be defeated by a man. So Ea needs to confuse her armies and calm her down. However, twice Ea went to confront Tiamat, who's taken the form of the most fearsome dragon, and each time his wisdom and courage desert him, and he returns to the court of gods, reporting that the power, venom, and fierce monsters are beyond his ability to tame, and that no invocation could affect Tiamat, Kingu, or the elder gods and monsters. Then Ea's son, the magnificent god Marduk, stepped forward. He agreed to battle with Tiamat, but he named his price. He demanded that supreme kingship and power be his, and that his dominion can never be changed or opposed. And then the minor gods put together a feast and a princely shrine with a nice throne on top, and they gave a big chant about how great and wonderful Marduk, the champion of the gods, is, who is sovereign over the whole universe. And as an example, they put some lights in the sky, a new constellation, and they encourage Marduk to shout the light out. And so he does. He shouts out the light and the stars disappear, and then he shouts again and they reappear. And he does this for a while until he gets bored, and then poof, the lights are gone again. And then he creates his weapons, each massive and fit for his hand alone. A mighty bow, his primary weapon, and well-crafted arrows, and he straps them all to his body. And his reserve weapon is a one-handed mace that is so powerful it can cause an earthquake and the tides to turn. He arms himself with a lightning bolt and fills his body with fire. He creates a massive war net to catch out all his enemies and summons the four winds to be servants, north, south, east, west. And to these winds he adds an evil wind, the tempest and the tornado, making him the master of seven winds. And these winds he releases to wreak havoc and announce the beginning of the war. And as he steps onto his storm chariot, which is drawn by venomous horses, their teeth are sharp and poisoned. They know not exhaustion. They can only devastate. Marduk stands clothed in awesome armor, wearing a regal crown on his lip, and on his lips a magic spell, and in his left hand he has herbs to counter poison as he faced down the road towards Tiamat. All the lesser gods and the disorganized mob are parading behind him. In fact, some are drunk. But as he looks more and more at Kingu and the fearsome monsters, he begins to get lightheaded and feels a bit faint. And he gets confused. Tiamat used womanly magic to take Marduk out in a single stroke. He wavers on his chariot, and all the gods who followed him grew worried for a moment. But Marduk withstood his mental pressure, and he held his battle mace high, calling out to Tiamat, why all the tricks? Why this army? Just because your sons were noisy and disrespected their fathers. Should you, our mother, reject compassion by seeking evil? You are the one who has wronged us, and you are the one who has an army that I challenge you for glory. I challenge you, Tiamat, to single combat. At this provocation, Tiamat flew into a rage, screaming and charging at Marduk. Soon he had an opening to toss his net and ensnare her. She opened her mouth to scream, and in that moment, Marduk shot the evil wind into her mouth and forced it open. All the winds entered her and tore up her insides, swelling her with wind. A single strong spear split open her distended stomach and punched right into her heart, extinguishing her life in a swift and vicious stroke. The gods were captured and imprisoned. They captured Kingu, cleaving him in two and seizing the tablets of destinies from his cold dead fingers. Then he turned to the corpse of Tiamat and smashed her neck with his mace. Then he sliced her in half and put half of her up in the sky and assigned a guard to keep her bolted firmly to the roof of the world. Then he created a lamp to imprison the waters, Tiamat, and ensure that they could never escape by creating the oceans in the process. And with that total victory, Marduk created the world order, making temples for his favorite gods, placing stars wherever suited him, marking out the days and creating the calendar so that he could rule over time itself. He makes time, day and night, and clouds and rain, and the Tigris and the Euphrates River, created from the blood that streamed from both Tiamat's eyes. And at some point, he disposes of all his battle captives, and he keeps each of the fierce 11 monsters created by Tiamat and the gods. And he creates statues of them and puts them at his feet. And then he announces that he will build a temple, and that temple will be set at Babylon, which will become his dwelling place. And so the gods spend a year feasting and drinking and creating bricks. And then they spend another year building a ziggurat just for Marduk's glory. After a while, Marduk thought to himself that this is quite a lot of work, and he went and consulted with Ea, saying, Father, surely we should have help. The gods need help. Why don't we create mankind? Why don't we create helpers? And he took the energy of the gods that he had defeated with Tiamat, and he took the blood of Kingu, and he mixed up some earth, and he poured the blood into the earth. And therefore the divine blood of the gods and the earth, and called forward the first man, Ammon. And he set the men to work in service of the gods, to irrigate, to plant. And the space between the Euphrates and the Tigris became the greatest, most wonderful, glorious place that the earth had ever seen. And thus was the world created, and thus was order created, and thus was man set as co-creators and guardians of creation against chaos. Now, there was a bit at the end of this, which I'd like to read, which is in the last tablet. When the gods saw how powerful and wonderful Marduk was, when they saw his plan and the magnificence of Babylon, which had been imagined by Marduk, each of the gods came forward and spoke an incantation. And in that incantation, they praised Marduk, and they themselves gave him their name and their powers and conferred on him more greatness. And so it went on for 50 times. And I'll just read out one small bit of it, which I think gives a sense of what this great epic sounded like. Remembering that the tablets themselves were kind of an aid memoir for oral storytelling. This was an oral epic that was told at the end of every year to bring in the new year, when Marduk's statue would be taken and brought outside of the ziggurat, and all of this would be sung by all the people. I'm just looking for it now, so excuse me. Okay. So all of the gods, one after the other, gave him their name and their attributes. So Kinma, the director of all the gods who gives counsel, at whose name the gods bend down in reverence as before a hurricane. Dinger Escure, let him take his lofty seat in the house of benediction. Let the gods bring their presence before him until he receives their offerings. No one but he accomplishes clever things. The 4 black heads are his creation. Apart from him, no god knows the measure of their days. Giru, who makes weapons hard, who has accomplished clever things in the battle with Tiamat. Comprehensive in wisdom, skilled in understanding, a deep mind that all the gods combined do not understand. Let Adu be his name. Let him cover up the whole span of heaven. Let him thunder with his pleasant voice upon the earth. May the rumble fill the clouds and give sustenance to the peoples below. Asaru, who, as his name says, mustered the divine fates. He indeed is the warden of absolutely all peoples. As Nebaru, let him hold the crossing place of heaven and underworld. They should not cross above or below, but should wait for him. Nebaru is a star, which caused him to shine in the sky. Let him take his stand in the heavenly staircase, that they may look on him. Yes, he who is constantly crossing the sea without resting. Let his name be Nebaru, who grasps her middle. Let him fix the paths of the stars of heaven. Let him shepherd all the gods like sheep. Let him bind Tiamat and put her life in mortal danger to generations yet unborn, to distant future days. May he continue unchecked. May he persist into eternity. Since he created the heavens and fashioned the earth, Enlil, the father, called him by his own name, Lord of the lands. Ea heard the names which all the Igigi called, and his spirit became radiant. Why? He whose name was extolled by his fathers, let him be like me, be called Ea. Let him control the sum of all my rights. Let him administer all my decrees. With the word 50, the great gods called his 50 names and assigned him an outstanding position. They should be remembered. A leading figure should expound them. A wise and learned should confer about them. A father should repeat them and teach them to his son. One should explain them to shepherd and herdsman. If one is not negligent to Marduk, the Enlil of gods, may one's land flourish and oneself prosper. For his word is reliable, his command unchanged. No god can alter the utterance of his mouth. When he looks in fury, he does not relent. When his anger is ablaze, no god can face him. His mind is deep, his spirit is all embracing, before whom sin and transgression are sought out. Instruction which a leading figure repeated before him, Marduk. He wrote it down and stored it so that generations can come to hear it. Marduk, who created the Iggy gods, though they diminish, let them call on his name, the song of Marduk, who defeated Tiamat and took kingship. So that's pretty much it. I should have done the Tiamat was dismembered, and basically all of heaven and earth and the underworld and the sky and landforms were created out of her body. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.